Hi, and welcome to Food and Fitness Mood Boosters. Today, I'm going to be chatting to Juliet, who is a registered nutritional therapist, and she's going to be telling us all about how food can affect our mood and simple strategies that we can use to improve it. So Juliet, it's fantastic to have you here, and please tell us some more about yourself.
Hi Amy, thanks for inviting me on. Yes, so I'm a registered nutritional therapist. So I did a 3-year nutrition course a few years ago, and I'm accredited with professional organisations, BANT and CNHC. And prior to that, I was a nurse, and so very much in the health arena, but in a very different format. So it was quite obviously a very westernized medical approach, and really good, but there obviously are limitations. And also I had family members that were struggling with health issues at the time, children with allergies, and I wanted to improve my health. And the more research I did, I felt that everything was sort of coming back to food and more natural ways to support health. So that led me to do my course and train as a nutritional therapist. So I focus on, but not exclusively, I focus on hormones, gut and digestive issues, ongoing fatigue, getting to the bottom of that, and immunity problems.
And all massively relevant at the moment, and especially with the whole COVID situation and lockdown. I'm sure a lot of people watching will have found their food might not be as good as they want it to be at the moment.
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk of about health and how to, well, actually maybe not enough talk about how to address health in a more holistic way, and food does play a really important part with the immune system, but also with mood and energy levels. So yeah, it is all relevant.
And first of all, tell us, how does food affect mood? Because most people think of boosting your mood by, playing some good music, having a little dance, or maybe doing a workout. But how does food affect it?
So, lots of different ways. So, so food supports neurotransmitter function, and neurotransmitters are basically brain messengers that control control mood, energy, and appetite. And if you're eating the right food to support that, then you're going to have better mood, you're going to have better energy, and things like just eating foods that have an array of different nutrients. So for example, B vitamins are really important for brain function, omega-3s, which are found in oily fish and nuts and seeds. So all of these have research shows that they're linked with your mood and your brain function. So getting the right foods to support all of that, but also things like making sure that you've got blood sugar balance. So that means that you're eating food throughout, well, you're eating in a meal food that will help keep the blood sugar balanced for longer, rather than having peaks and troughs. When you eat kind of more sugary foods or processed foods, that's what tends to happen. So if you're keeping the blood sugar balanced, then you will avoid increased production of insulin, and also this causes inflammation if you're constantly having these sugar blood glucose spikes, and is linked to ill health. Obviously, if you're having to produce insulin more often, and then that can lead to insulin resistance. And also having what's called an anti-inflammatory diet. And what
would be in the anti-inflammatory diet?
So a really great example, and it's talked about a fair bit, is the Mediterranean diet, which is linked with really good mental and health outcomes. So that would be things like your nuts, your seeds, fruit and veg, and then oily foods, which are the healthy fats. So things like the oily fish, olives, the avocado, and the nuts and seeds, and not having too much red meat, but maybe having more fish and poultry, or things like the legumes, the beans and the pulses.
Yeah, and the Mediterranean diet gets a lot of press as well. So if that's something you recommend and there are people watching, definitely something to look into on research. And you mentioned as well, you said the sugar drops, so your insulin was rising and spiking throughout the day. What's a typical kind of modern diet that represents that, and how can people change it?
So foods that are processed, so foods that have lots of ingredients in, or they have lots of what's called hydrogenated cooking oils, so the trans fats, so things like the pastries, the biscuits, and also the sugary foods. So if you're eating also processed foods, it has lots of ingredients in. So you look at the packaging and it's kind of got more than 5-7 ingredients. So if you're eating foods like that, that tends to cause these sugar spikes and then dips. So it's about having meals that have a balance of a quality protein. So whether that be animal protein or vegetarian, so whether you're having kind of chicken, fish, or vegetarian, which would be tofu or beans or pulses, and then also a complex carbohydrate. So those are the not the white carbs, but the whole grain carbs. So things like wholemeal pasta and brown rice and quinoa and buckwheat. So foods like that. And then also obviously half the plate should be vegetables. So if you're aiming to have a plate that looks like that, that should keep you fuller for longer and keep your blood sugar balanced until the next meal. And then it's avoiding that snacking in between, which also then will raise you're repeatedly kind of causing the insulin to be produced, because then the sugar is coming into the body through the snacks in between the meals.
So really you're looking for 3 good meals a day with your proteins, your complex carbs, and some good fats to keep you full, and that should stop you from
and
snacking.
Your vegetables.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, and your vegetables, of course.
Yeah, so the idea is that if you're getting that in a meal, I mean, it won't always be perfectly those ratios, but if you're trying to get essentially kind of have that as a template of what should be in each meal, then you will be fuller for longer and have less of a craving to sort of have the sugar or to snack, because when that sugar is going up and down all the time, actually it increases the amount of cravings you have and you just feel a bit rubbish. So you're bound to kind of go for the sweet things more or the caffeine more to kind of boost you up.
And so really it's a self-perpetuating circle. You're snacking more, which actually makes you feel hungrier, and then you end up consuming empty calories, which you don't really need, and actually likely to be the stuff that's not great for you at the same time.
Yeah, so you can get caught in that cycle, especially mid-afternoon. That's a really common time where people have a dip and they just really kind of crave something.
And one of the things that I've seen around as a solution to that is drinking more water. So if someone does feel that kind of craving, is it a good idea for them to drink water first and then see if they're still really hungry, or just sort of make sure their meals are better planned in the first place?
Well, it's a combination. So if you've had a filling lunch, for example, then that should see you through till dinner. And if you're kind of aiming to have about 1.5 litres of water per day, then you should be hydrated. But sometimes, yeah, there can be confusion about what the body is kind of letting you know. And it's not that you should never snack. It's just going for maybe the more slow release sugar things. So things like nuts, or an apple with nut butter on, or an oat cake with something like hummus or avocado on, just so you are getting something nutritious but also keeping that blood sugar balance. So yeah, I mean, kind of it's just being in sort of checking in, have I actually drunk enough water today? Because sometimes you can just be dehydrated, but if you've not had a filling lunch, then it probably is that you're hungry mid-afternoon.
Yeah, completely. And I think we all really know deep down when what we've had for lunch probably isn't serving us to keep us full for the whole day. Yeah.
So yeah, it's just trying to kind of get in what you can with each meal. And that doesn't always happen because people are busy, but yeah, ideally that's what you're aiming for.
And one of the things you mentioned just there is being aware of what you're having. So is awareness really important around A, what you're eating in your meals, so are they balanced? And also B, your environment and what you're consuming throughout the day?
Yeah, so in terms of, I always focus on not just what you're eating, but in terms of the environment, and also what you're doing. So people that are eating on the go or rushing, which I end up doing sometimes. It's not like people, this is real life and you're busy. Or if you're what's called mindlessly eating, so you're just either in front of the computer or in front of the television, and then you're not engaging with the process. So what happens is you're likely to not be chewing enough if you're in a hurry, or you're not allowing your body to do what it needs to do. So produce the enzymes, produce what's needed to help digestion. And then if you've got good digestion, then you'll absorb the nutrients from the food. So it's about trying not to eat in a rushed, stress state, and just being more mindful and chewing more. Just really simple things like chewing more can make a huge difference to how the whole process of digestion happens.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic tip as well. So actually taking your time on a meal and presumably taking away distractions. I know a lot of people, myself included, I've done this. You sit down with something on Netflix on potentially, and you end up kind of mindlessly eating, I guess. So the ideal setup, as you suggested, is really having time to chew and being in a situation where you can slow down your food and you're not distracted by something.
Yeah, as much as possible. I think it's not always doable for every meal, but at least if you can do that for 50% of your meals, so that you're enjoying the process and savoring it when you can, and just not kind of doing it without thinking.
And as a foodie myself, I absolutely love food, so I think it's something that should be enjoyed and celebrated, especially with Christmas coming up, because you've got to enjoy it after the year 2020's been.
Absolutely, yeah, it is about enjoyment, and it's an important part of our lives. Yeah,
and it's a massive part of being social as well. You go around, you meet friends, either a cup of tea or you go around for a meal. So personally, I think it's really important to have a good relationship with food, because it's essential for us to live, and it's a big part of our social environment.
Oh, very much so. And I think it is, that is probably been a bit lost, people eating together and families sitting down. You kind of get out of that habit. But as much as you can, just aim to have more meals where it is with the family or is with someone else. And I think it is much more enjoyable. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's taking one step at a time. It's not changing every single meal straight away. If you can just take one meal a day and change the environment, that's a win. That's a step in the right direction.
Totally. So when I kind of discuss this, or someone in my position discuss all these things you're meant to be doing, I think it can feel very overwhelming if you're not even close to doing that. And it's not about kind of thinking, well, I'm doing everything wrong, or I'm having bad food, or labeling things as good or bad. It's not a helpful way to look at it. It's just about, right, well, let's just start with adding things in, rather than saying we're going to cut everything out. Let's just add things in and almost crowd out the stuff that you don't really need or that's not really serving you. But yeah, I mean, in terms of small changes, I would say breakfast is quite a significant one.
And something that I quite like to sort of think of it as is, if you are going to make these changes to your lifestyle, and food is part of your lifestyle, it's got to be something which you can commit to and stick to. So if you can ask yourself the question, could I stick to this for in a year's time or 2 years down the line? That's quite a useful concept. Do you use that a lot?
Well, I think sort of diets and fads never work. So it's about having balance. It's about doing what's achievable and realistic, and then it's more likely to be long lasting. So you would maybe introduce those changes gradually, so that they're just more achievable and they're more likely to be sustained, rather than crash dieting or just following something that's you think is going to have quick effects. It doesn't always work like that.
And obviously there is so much content out there. I mean, when I do my research into the nutrition field, I actually feel quite overwhelmed, and I work in fitness, and I think I have quite a good knowledge of the area. So for anyone going into it, it does seem really overwhelming, and obviously working with a professional like yourself is really useful to kind of coach you through it. What's the big advantage you'd say to having someone coach you through this minefield of nutrition?
Well, firstly, it doesn't have to be a minefield. I think there's lots of basic things that can be followed in terms of kind of the ratio of what should be on a plate, getting certain things into your diet. But the advantage is if you see a nutritional therapist is that then if you quite often people come to me because they have issues. So it's about working with them in a very personalized, individualized capacity, assessing what will work for them, maybe doing some testing if it's appropriate to see what's going on, and then you're tailoring their diet or their eating to what is required to help put their body back into balance.
Yeah, and it's all about finding that balance, and each person is individual, so presumably it's a very different process, or can be very different processes for different people.
Completely, and people coming from very different different starting points, or they're in a different position, because there'll be some people that have quite chronic ongoing gut or digestive issues, or they have allergies or intolerances, so there it's, you know, it has to be kind of very individualized. But then if you haven't got significant health problems, then there are just kind of quite basic things that you can do just to feel better in quite a simple and effective way.
And having someone to guide you on that process really fast tracks your results and gives you the confidence that you know you're on the right path, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely will give you that support and guidance and direction, which a lot of people are really good at researching nowadays, but they don't necessarily know for sure that what they're researching will be right for them.
Yeah, completely. And so having someone to guide you is really, really useful. And you mentioned, I know you've talked about this before, I think I've seen this on your social media, talking about the brain to gut kind of relationship. And you mentioned that your gut is like your third brain. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, your second brain.
Sorry, second brain. Sorry.
You might have an extra one. Yeah, so there's lots and lots of research that's ongoing about this, and there is almost like a communication highway between the gut and the brain, and hence why it's called second brain. And so the state of the gut massively influences our mental health, our emotions and mood. And that's why it's incredibly important, even if you haven't got gut symptoms, just to be mindful of ways to support the gut, and eating and kind of just living in a way that will promote gut health, because about 70% or more of our immune system is based in the gut. And also lots of the serotonin, that's all in the gut, and that's linked with mood and with your mental health. And so if you've got a balanced and diverse gut microbiome, you've got a healthy lining of the gut wall and things like that, and you haven't got too much inflammation, or very minimal inflammation, this will all result in you having better mood and better mental health. So yeah, it's a massive influence on our brain.
Yeah, and I didn't realize it was 70%. 70% of your immune system is based in your gut biome, you know, gut bacteria. That's incredible.
Approximately. Yeah. So yes, and a lot of people, you know, there are simple things you can do, and having things like more of a Mediterranean diet, avoiding the more inflammatory foods, which is the more processed, the sugary foods, the foods that have trans fats in, so that is more basically the processed foods, and just having more vegetables, having more fruit, and the more fiber you have, which is from vegetables, and from whole grains, then that's supporting the microbiome, the gut bacteria. So that's really important. So doing that.
So really, you're feeding your body for success, really. So, you know, if you're thinking of, you want to put the best fuel in your body, because what you put in is really what you get out in terms of mood, energy.
Yeah, there's a huge influence, and just making small changes can have a really big impact in a fairly short space of time.
Yeah, and so it really brings home the fact that we want to really look after this, and I think it's quite ignored sometimes. It's very easy to bury your head in the sand and kind of focus on other problems. So yeah, these fantastic, absolutely fantastic tips to work with. So obviously everyone has the diet they're with at the moment, but from our chat today, what are 3 things people could look at or potentially do to improve their diet, like right now? You know, taking action right now is the best thing to do.
Right now. Okay. So I would say, first of all, breakfast. That's something that can be changed up quite simply, and that will have a big effect on getting the right things into your body and setting you up for the day and having that stable blood sugar. So make sure that you have protein in your breakfast. So that can be nuts, that can be eggs, can even be fish if you feel like eating fish in the morning, but quite commonly it'll be things like nuts, nut butter, or eggs. Making sure that you've got the slow release sugar food, so things like the whole grain, so oats. Porridge is a brilliant one because that's really slow release of sugar, and it's also got tryptophan, which is good for converting into serotonin, which we need kind of to be happy. So porridge, and then add some antioxidants like berries to that, and either some nuts, seeds, or having nut butter, so that'd be peanut butter or any other nut butter on a whole grain toast, or sourdough. So if you try and get the protein, the healthy fats, and the slow release sugar food into breakfast, that will make a big difference. Okay. Number 2 would be getting more vegetables in where you can. So to your lunch and dinners, just trying to add in more veg, and also you can have smoothies. That's another way of topping up fruit and veg, but predominantly go for veg as opposed to fruit. So maybe the ratios would be a bit less fruit and more veg. So for example, if it's 5 a day, that would be 2 fruit, 3 veg. But aim to just have more colour in your meals, more vegetables, and more of a diversity. Number 3 would be just trying to reduce the amount of sugary foods and processed foods, trying to cook from scratch, trying to have what we call whole foods.
Yeah, and they're all absolutely fantastic and things that we can look into today. And from those, how much is a portion of fruit or veg as a size guide?
Yeah, so that would be a handful. So what fits in your palm would be a portion.
Cool. And that's super easy to measure out just using a handful.
Yeah, it's just an approximate. So you kind of look at the food and it's just an approximate. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And obviously you mentioned that people can get caught out by having lots of extra sugar in their diet. And where are the places that catch most people out? Because personally, I've looked at the back of packaging when I go around the supermarket, and there's sugar everywhere.
Yeah, so there is a lot of sugar in foods. Anything that you haven't kind of made from scratch, there is. But breakfast cereals have a huge amount in. So that's why doing something like porridge, or if you make granola at home, then you don't have that refined sugar. And also it's cheaper, and you can batch make it for a whole week. A lot of the bars that look like they would be healthy, they're sort of energy bars, or they've got nuts and seeds, often they have quite a lot of sugar in as well. So most snacks have a lot of sugar, and I think particularly breakfast cereals.
So breakfast cereals are really the one to watch out for. And you suggested in your 3 tips as well, switching to porridge or something with like eggs or a nut butter on toast. So really switching that would actually solve the problem of trying to find a cereal with less sugar. Yeah.
Or a homemade granola. Yeah, that type of thing. Or overnight oats, which is kind of oats soaked with either any type of milk, and then you can add things in like in the morning, seeds or berries, and that's quite a nice one.
And would you say watching what's on the back of food labels as well is important? Because a rule that I've come across before is if there are lots of ingredients which you can't even read the name of, let alone pronounce, it's probably not going to be great for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good indication that the more ingredients that are in something, the more processed, the more it's likely to not be good for you. So yeah, if there's kind of more than 5-7 ingredients, then it is likely to be. But it's not that you can necessarily, never eat those foods. It's just about having a balance, having moderation, and just trying to bring in more of the whole foods.
And would you say, especially with Christmas coming up, and obviously everyone wants to celebrate Christmas, everyone wants to have a good time, would you say just keeping it balanced? So, knowing when you're full, enjoying the rich and sweet treats that people might be having, but just having them in the amounts that's not too much.
Yeah, I mean, people will indulge at Christmas. That's what they do, and it's not to kind of feel shame about kind of indulging, but it's just, yeah, maybe listening to your body more, and am I full, and do I need to do this? And sometimes it can be just you're bored, or it's just a way of kind of boosting your mood. But are there other ways that you can do that just by connecting with people more? And obviously this is going to be a tough Christmas, a bit of a different year, so yeah, and food does play a big part in people's, it's related to their kind of, their mental health. And if you're feeling low or you're feeling really tired, then obviously you do kind of go for those more unhealthy foods. And it's just about kind of how can you feel better, and just keeping hydrated, and just things like that over Christmas. That's just simple things. If you're
and
drinking
really
more alcohol.
it's really doing the simple things right, which get you the benefits. So keep it simple, keep those steps going through, and the bigger things will follow.
Yeah, and just making sure, for example, when you're kind of, if you're having breakfast, then, because people, if they're over Christmas, they might be sleeping in and then avoiding Christmas and then snacking through the day. So that could be one thing you could do, and then just keeping hydrated. But I mean, it's a short period and people will kind of maybe have more, but try to be balanced, but, also try not to get really upset about it.
Yeah, and it's all about seeing the bigger picture as well. I think it's important to enjoy those celebrations because, like you touched on back there, food is obviously a great mood booster, but it's also in combination with things like fitness and social connection, which it really comes into its own. So it's not really just a solo factor; it actually works in connection with many others.
Yeah, completely. And things like if you're really stressed, then even if you're having a really healthy diet, you're not necessarily digesting and absorbing well. So it's always looking at the broader picture. And that's why I try to be as holistic as possible, because if someone's super stressed and they're not sleeping, then there's only so much you can do with the food. You kind of need to work from every angle, from a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely a fantastic approach, and it really fits with the angle I come from with when I work with my clients through fitness coaching. And I think it's never one factor. There are always multiple ones at play, and you've got to take them all into consideration, even if you are primarily working with one factor. So that's fantastic to hear.
Yeah, I think, it has to be this kind of full 360 approach. Otherwise, you just don't really, you're not really helping someone, I think. Not fully.
Completely. And at the end of the day, I know for me, it's all about helping people achieve their full potential and be as happy and enjoying life as much as possible. Yes. Right. And I'm sure that's the same for you.
Yes, yeah, you want to achieve kind of the best results for someone, and absolutely.
And it's all about thriving in your life, enjoying what you're doing. So if there's something stopping you, having the professional there to help you get rid of that roadblock, can be a game changer.
Totally, yeah. It's quite specific guidance, and it will get you there a bit quicker, and just with that right support.
Yeah, and that's absolutely fantastic. And if anyone wants to get in contact with you from watching our chat just now, what's the best way for them to do that?
So they can email me, or there's also my phone number and contact details on my website. So it's Natural Nutritional Health. Is the name of my business. So yeah, but I'll put the links underneath, or maybe you will, Imi.
Don't worry, I'll make sure the links are down there. So if you are watching this now, you should be able to see them and be able to take some action if that's what you want to do. But if not, I hope you enjoyed our chat today, and I hope that whoever's watching has got value out of this, and you can take away at least one nugget of information that you can apply today. Because if you get your food right, it can really help your mood, and if you can boost your mood, it plays into so many different areas of your life. So start with one point, sow the seed, and it can spread into so many different areas.
Definitely.
So thank you so much for coming on and chatting to us today.
Thank you, Imi. Thank you.